Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Woodstock, Georgia, it's time for Cherokee Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to Cherokee Business Radio. Stone Payton here with you this morning, and today's episode is brought to you in part by Alma Coffee, sustainably grown, veteran-owned, and direct trade, which of course means from seed to cup, there are no middlemen. Please go check them out at myalmacoffee.com and go visit their Roastery Cafe at 3448 Holly Springs Parkway in Canton. As for Harry or the brains of the outfit, Leticia, and tell them that Stone sent you. You guys are in for a real treat this morning. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast with Coker Signs and Graphics, the man himself, Mr. Dan Coker. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Stone. How are you?
I am doing fine. It's a real pleasure to have you out. Mission, purpose, what are you out there trying to do for folks with Coker Signs and Graphics?
Well, I started the business about 20 years ago when I got married, and my wife is a dental hygienist. Huh. She has a very set schedule, and it's very inflexible. And we needed something that would kind of we needed one of our jobs to be flexible because we were raising kids, and somebody's got to always go get the kids, take them to the doctor, or at least have the kids home for summer. I mean, you just don't want somebody else raising your kids necessarily all the time. Right. We needed a flexible job, and I had avoided creating my own sign business for a long time. So we decided it was finally time just to do that. So when you try to help someone craft a sign, I'm operating under the impression that one way to do it is maybe they already have an existing logo or a set of graphics, and you can reproduce that and make it big and bold and beautiful. But when that's not the case, do you ever work with businesses who haven't quite got that package together yet, and or maybe it makes sense to fold in my art and my the look and feel, but I'm trying to create something for an event or something totally different. What does that creative process look like early in the relationship? Stone, my job is when somebody comes to me and tells me what they want, my job is to tell them that they can't have it. No, of course I'm joking, but I spent years past working for some bigger sign companies and franchise sign companies, and one of the things I felt like when I wanted to start my own company was that a lot of folks are just being underserved by those bigger businesses, and it's hard to get. It's hard to find somebody that will actually kind of tell you the truth about. I mean, you come in with what you need, and then they've got what they need to sell you, and they're usually going to try and sell you what's best for them. I'm not criticizing everybody out there. I'm just saying that that's the way that the bigger sign shops and companies have to work to get everybody paid, because their overhead is so tremendous. I really have very little overhead. Now, how did you pull that off? Well, I work from my home. I have I have a certain amount of technology that I use, and work from my basement, work from my garage. I have a home office, and I'm able to accomplish a whole lot there now. And the bigger signs, larger stuff, I just don't do anymore. I just give a referral, but on the front end, somebody needs somebody there to be very honest with them about, here's what that sign is, here's what you're asking for, but you might be better served to purchase this. It costs less, it'll last longer, and it'll be more effective. So somebody needs to be there to tell people that. Well, no, that's what I need out of a sign company, right? So, for example, hypothetical, but I think we're going to see more and more of this because I think this type of business for us is opening up again. We were talking about this before we came on air. Conference and trade show event kind of business. Having Business RadioX in your booth or at your event can add a nice dimension to it.
if I were, and I probably will be, getting ready to either have signage for my community partners or my clients or for Business RadioX, I would think circumstances, objectives would dictate your counsel on what to do with respect to signs and graphics. For example, if we were going to be at an outdoor event under some sort of tent, you might have a whole different set of recommendations than if we're going to be indoors at some, startup pitch contest. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, where I usually start with customers is it's Christmas and you have anything you want. So, and we'll work down from there. But a lot of it, and it's hard to talk about this without talking about how technology has changed things.
Oh, I bet.
Even over the past 15 years. That means that a lot of stuff out there now costs less, lasts longer. I remember when digital printing was not a thing. And now it's huge. Digital printing is huge, and it's fantastic. There's a lot of color there. You can get your logo there. You can get a lot of pop. You can get a lot of eyeballs. Right. And there's no reason to pay a fortune for it. But and there's a lot of different ways to go. Like if you were doing a tent or something out there, now there's a lot has been done with something called dye sublimation. That is printing graphic onto fabric. And you see these tents outside that have graphics all over them. That's typically the way they're done now.
I wasn't even thinking about that. So you could actually, that is one way to do it, is to put the graphic on the tent itself.
Right. And they're sold that way now. They come as a package. And I have some friends who do that. And the price, I remember the price of that 10 years ago was outrageous, and now it's very affordable, and it's something that you can keep and pack up and put in the garage and get it out 6 months or whatever, and it represents your business very well, and it doesn't cost as much as it used to, and also just like giant outdoor banners or anything like that. There's just a lot of different ways to go, and I don't have all of that stuff in house. I really don't, but I know the people who do, and a lot of times my job is to crunch the graphic and get it into an acceptable place for the printer to do their job.
Well, here again, I would feel better about if you, let's say, I think you mentioned you don't do the tents actually, but if you help me design or redesign or do something special with our art, I would have more confidence in you referring me out to someone whom you believe to be best in class for that thing. I would feel like I was going to get better service. I would feel like you're a better judge. Otherwise, I'm walking the yellow pages for those of you that are old enough to know what yellow pages are.
No, you and I are the last two.
I just lost the whole audience for that reference.
Yeah. No, there are a lot of industries out there now, like that do dye sublimation or that do digital printing, that are what's called to the industry. That is, they'll sell to me, but they won't sell to you. Oh, and I just did a video, and I just posted it, as a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, on this very subject, where my job is to crunch the graphic. My job is to kind of massage you and get the graphic exactly to be what you want it to be, and at the same time to be a file that this company can print from. And then they do their work, but they don't have a graphic designer there. And like I said, I just did a video that has there are a lot of so-called sign shops online these days where if you can get what you want from them, then fine. But buyer beware. Chances are, they don't have a graphics person there that you can call and say, can you move this logo over to the right a bit, or can you make this bigger? That person's not there. That's why their prices are very cheap. And if you need to talk to them at 7:00 at night, then they're not there. But that's just the online world. But my job is to interface with you and to crunch that graphic, get it exactly where you want it, and then give that file to the company that can get it printed and then get it in your hands.
So I'll share with you one potential example. And I think once again, we're probably a little bit late in the game. And I don't even know if it's the right thing to do, but an idea that surfaced for us at Business RadioX corporate, which is one of the hats that I wear in the Business RadioX system. We have talk show coffee mugs. You're not going to get one today because we're having a supply problem, but I owe you a Business RadioX talk show coffee mug. And we have this, some dark red. You probably know the PMS color or whatever for the big X. But I thought in October, I know that is the Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I thought it might be interesting for a little while to do like a limited edition with the X being pink. I think that could have been a fun thing. I'm probably late again. But I mean, it sounds like you're the kind of guy I would go to first to maybe get counsel and say, Stone, that's ridiculous. Don't even do it. Or, yes, Stone, cool idea. Let's get a look or two together, and then let's think through. Do you really want it on the mugs? Do you want it on mic flags? Do you want it on the wall? You want it on hats, shirts? But I get the sense where I would start with that whole pursuit. Now that I know you, is I would start with you,
right? And in that case, I'm not that guy, but I know that guy,
right? For the end product, but you're the guy to help me think through the strategy, sure. and maybe even get the graphic right. Yes, sure,
absolutely. And like I said, I started doing signs when I was 13 years old. I'm 58.
Boy, you look good for 58.
Oh, God.
And 58 is not old. I just turned 58 August the 6th.
Oh, okay. Another 1962 baby. No, I started doing signs when I was 13. We were talking earlier. I had an art teacher in middle school who taught our class the line space method of hand lettering.
Oh my! That sounds incredibly complicated.
It was fun. It was absolutely fun. And for those of us who wanted a deeper course in lettering, my art teacher taught those of us how to drag what was called at the time hand dragging letters with a paintbrush, and everything was hand lettered back then. And when I was 13, I got my first sign job. The local Baptist church needed their lettering, needed their name painted on the side of their bus. And that was my first sign job. It was a local Baptist church. I misspelled the word Baptist.
Ouch.
Now, you laugh.
Oh, my gracious.
You laugh. These Baptists did not have that sense of humor that you have. But I fixed it. And what I'm saying is, that started a track years ago when I was 13 of doing something artistic and something that was created around signage. Because it just seemed like something fun to do and a good way to make money. And so, but over the years, I've seen technology come and go. You see what different types of things that become very popular, like wraps are really popular today. Vehicle wraps.
Oh, okay.
Those are huge. I mean, and they're absolutely great. I don't do them at my shop.
Right.
Because I'm a small one-man shop, and that takes a bigger shop. It takes expensive technology. You got to have 3 or 4 sets of hands on that. You got to have a lot of climate control to do a good job. But I have friends who do that.
You're the guy that knows the guy.
I'm the guy that knows the guy.
Right.
And if someone needs that, then I can refer it to them. Or I can process the artwork and then I can send it to them. So, but I've just seen a lot of things come and go over the years that were fads or different technology that I'm kind of able to steer people in a different direction if they need to be steered that way.
So how does the whole sales and marketing thing work for a guy like you? I guess your work is out there advertising for you all the time, but do you go out and make sales calls, or have you been at this long enough your phone rings? How does that whole thing work?
Funny you should ask that. It's been a really interesting road of how to do that because I do work from my home and I do work from my shop. Now, you saw my truck outside. I've got my business name on my truck. I get I get calls from still today.
When you have to think about that, guys, he has to do a really good job with that thing on the sign on his truck because it is a sign, advertising sign. It was like when I used to sell sales training, right? You were expecting. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So, but yes, I did.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's one way. And someone told me years ago, you've got to get a website.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Okay, if I've got to get a website, I suppose I'll get a website. And I did. And I got a website. It was like one static page just floating out there in space. And I thought, well, it's really not doing me any good. And then over the years, I started out going door to door just with business cards, just promoting my business.
Really?
And I found that the business with the biggest sign on the door that said no soliciting, I was the most likely to make a sale at that place.
That's interesting. You got to say more about that.
They usually want a bigger no soliciting sign. But apparently that one's not working. But no, I didn't have a product to sell. I mean, I didn't have anything in my hand to sell. I was promoting, and usually when you walk into someone's place of business and hand them a business card and say, "I'm a local sign guy, I do all kind of signs," and you turn around and walk out the door, they usually stop you before you get to the door, and they need something because most businesses need signage of some kind.
Right.
So, and I thought about that when I started to design business, is that people have always needed signs. Right. And they always will. So that's something that I can do, and that's something that I'm pretty sure is going to be around. Even though years ago someone told me that, no, you got to get out of signs because now it's all websites. The only billboards are going to be on the information superhighway, and you're going to be left in the dust. And I thought, that's probably not true. I think that we're probably going to have signs around for as long as we have brick and mortar buildings and all that. And that is true. We're always going to have signs, even though the technology changes. But for me, that was the big step, was just and I told you before, I'm an only child. I'm painfully shy. So it's hard to go door to door, walk in a door and place a business.
I'll bet.
And try and start a conversation with somebody that may be grumpy or just be tired of people, students coming in selling paintings or something like that. I mean, but that part of the business was actually good. And doing that and some of the customers that I approached 20 years ago are customers that I still have today. And a lot of them are right here in Woodstock. So
wow. Well, that speaks to the quality of your work, and nothing sells, I don't think, as well as good work.
That's true, and I don't want to spend a lot of time bad-mouthing other businesses. It's just other business models. I spent time at other franchise, let's call them that, franchise sign shops, where we were taught that when someone hit the door, hi, welcome to such and such signs, how will you be paying today? And I saw people. Wow. I saw people turn around and go right back out the front door, and without even a word, because that's not what they're looking for. People want to be people. People want someone to listen to them, to understand what they need, and to help them. Yeah. And I felt like there was this huge population out there that was underserved as far as that went, and I was right. I mean, because people want personal service.
I know I do.
And that's something that was being lost. That's something that was being overlooked and thrown away in the industry. And I thought, well, that's really sad, I mean, because when I was growing up, there was a guy that I knew that painted signs out of his garage. And, but that was back in the day of the giant boards and all the paint and all the sanding and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of that's gone now. But he had customers come to his house. He would sit down with them and draw out a sketch, and they would come to a decision on, what it was that they wanted the sign to look like. Mm-hmm. And 3 weeks later, the guy would come back and get his sign.
Yeah.
And so the guy doing the lettering, he always had plenty of work. He always had good customers. His customers appreciated him. And if he felt like working one day, he'd work. If he felt like going fishing one day, he would go fishing. So I thought there was.
Oh, that's beautiful.
There's an attraction to that too.
All right, so tell us about your backstory. How does one land here? I'm sure it wasn't a purely direct path. Tell us a little bit about your early career and some of the milestones along the way, if you would.
Well, we were talking earlier, and I mentioned, being 13 and having a teacher that taught art, and learning the sign trade. What was also happening when I was 13, besides an infatuation with a certain redhead at school, was what was also happening was when we were talking about this earlier, I loved radio. I mean, I really fell in love with radio at the time as well. And I used to stay up late at night listening to the radio and listening to storytellers more than anything, more than music. I didn't so much get into the music. And then later on when I was 18, I quit college for the first time.
The first time. And I've gotten expert at starting and quitting college. But when I was 18, I'd quit college, and a friend of mine called me and said that they need DJs over at the radio station. I said, well, so what? What am I supposed to do about that? He said, get over. I know you don't have any job. I know you don't have a job right now. Get over here and put in an application. And I said, well, okay. I mean, sure. Why not? And I had all these fantasies about how radio worked. There's this big steel and glass building with 15 stories high and all these professional people running around. And I went to this radio station my friend worked at, and it was not that. I mean, it's like they say, making sausage, and it was. There's just this mystique around radio that really got destroyed when I was 18, and I saw how it really worked. Yeah. But I put in, and I got a job working as a DJ at this radio station, and spent about a year doing that. But that station was on the decline. It was on its way out. Unfortunately, I mean, it was a small country station. And unfortunately, this is 1981, and the Oak Ridge Boys had just released the song Elvira. Oh yeah,
and we played that about 20 times an hour, I think, and it was, which is why I don't carry a gun. I think I would have probably put myself out of my misery back then, but it was a good experience. I mean, it was a good experience, and it was a lot of fun. And then years later, when I went into the Air Force, I went in open general. I told the Air Force they could do whatever they wanted to with me. I was living in Colorado, and I was bored, and I didn't want to go back to school because I knew I would just quit again. So a lot of my family members were military, and so I said, I'll join the military. And I joined the Air Force open general, and on the day that we got a dream sheet, what was called a dream sheet in basic training, on the back page was radio and television broadcaster. And I thought, well, that looks interesting. I'll give that. I'll see if that works. And I got a slot, and I got an audition, and I got a slot in Armed Forces Radio and Television. So I got to spend the next 4 years working in Armed Forces Radio and Television for the Air Force. And I got to go to Korea. I spent a year in Korea doing radio mostly.
I love your attitude toward life. I got to go to Korea.
Well, it was
you made it a positive experience.
It was. I did not grow up as an airplane guy, right? But at that base, and I don't think I'm giving away any secrets here. There were two divisions of F-16s. There was 12 in one and 12 in the other. Two different squadrons, and that was amazing. When just to stand there next to the flight line and watch those guys take off, all 24 of them with full afterburner, right about dusk, and just ground shakes every time that one would take off, and I would just sit there and go, "Wow, this is amazing." But we did spend a lot of time in chemical warfare training, which was not a lot of fun. But most of the time, I just did my radio show in the morning from 6 to 9. I did a radio show for the base, which there were about 2,000 people on the base. And you got to talk to people, and you got to promote people, and you got to be in a place. And I don't know if you watch cooking shows on TV.
Oh, yeah. That's about all I watch.
Well, Guy Fieri.
I watched him last night.
I watch him all the time, and I love that show. But one thing I love about Guy is that he'll take a nothing, nobody hole in the wall, but with a core where people are really making good food and they're well studied and they're working for their community and they're doing good stuff. He takes a big spotlight and puts it on them, and shows. Yeah. And I think that's great to be able to do that, what he does. And I really admire him for that. And I got to do that in the Air Force. I mean, in Korea, it was mostly with radio. You could highlight a program or a person or whatever you wanted to highlight. And then when I moved on to Turkey, I spent a year and a half in Turkey doing mostly television there, television news. I was anchor for a while, a television news anchor, and also did E&G reporting. But that was also a great opportunity to be, in a military installation and take a big spotlight and just put it on these people that worked their fannies off and did the hardest jobs in the military. I mean, these guys were on the flight line in Turkey, in Incirlik. It was 95 degrees by 9 o'clock in the morning on the flight line. And sometimes these guys would be in chem warfare gear for hours at a time. I was in the military, but I got to see people that did difficult military jobs. And I got to do stories on them. I got to shine the light on them and say, hey, look at this guy. Or look at this unit. Look at what they've done, and they've done an awesome job. They've gone from here to there, and when you see them at the NCO club, buy them a beer because because they're doing an outstanding job. So and I miss that. I miss being able to talk to people on television and just shine a light on them and show what a great job they're doing because that needs to be done.
Amen. And that's a large part of our mission at Business RadioX. It's one of the things that I enjoy about this work because there are people in our community right here in Cherokee County that are just out there grinding it out and doing great work, for the market, the profession, the community. So I genuinely identify with what you're describing because I get to live that now. All right, so you've got all that background in radio. You've got all that. You had that very early background in the sign and graphic business, but you also kind of you went beyond just the broadcasting aspect of using these resources, and you're neck deep in the book and audio book world as well. Speak to that if you would before we wrap. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And I know we talked about it a little bit before we went on air. I'd like our listeners to know about that because that's another way you've chosen to serve.
Yeah, if you want to put it that way. Well, like we were discussing earlier, I grew up around storytellers.
Yeah,
my dad, my grandfather. Like I had a bunch of uncles, whenever there was a fish fry or whenever there was a campfire, whenever there's a family get-together, there were going to be stories told. There were going to be jokes told. And I grew up around this atmosphere of storytelling. And when I wanted to go into theater, I wanted to go into drama when I went into college, my parents kind of scratched their heads, I think. Where did this come from, But it's like, I've grown up with this. This came from you. You're the ones that introduced me to this world of storytelling and theater and stage and all that and radio and television. A lot of it's just storytelling. But
the best of it, I think, is storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to find a story that's worth telling is a great thing. But when I left I left Armed Forces Radio and Television in 1990, came to the Atlanta area. I didn't want to be in broadcasting anymore. I wanted to be in production. Didn't want to necessarily be in broadcasting anymore. I love the writing part. I love the performance part. Love the editing part. I loved shooting video. I loved a lot of aspects of production. But found it hard because the technology was changing. We got any technology in the Air Force, it was already worn out. We didn't get anything We didn't get anything. There was a television camera or whatever until it was already worn out.
Well, you mentioned before we went on air, I have technology right here in this little table that was probably every bit of as sophisticated, maybe beyond capability of some of the stuff you worked on that might have taken up a room, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And now you can do what a giant radio station could do. Gosh, it would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you've got it on your desktop,
right?
Which is amazing. And it's very awesome. But I missed writing when I left the Air Force. I didn't have to write for television news anymore. I missed writing, and a few years after that, I started thinking about all the things that happened. Maybe a little PTSD going on there. But there was just a lot of, and I'm a weirdness magnet. Whatever's weird, if something's weird, it's going to stick to me or it's going to come around me. And for some reason, I started thinking about all these stories and all these things that happened, and a friend of mine turned me on to audiobooks. And I thought, that's kind of cool. And I thought, I'd like to make an audiobook out of all these stories and stuff. And then I found out that I could not until I had copyrighted material. So a friend of mine had a shoebox in my sign shop. It was literally full of stuff that just stacked on paper of stuff that I'd written. And he said, "Why don't you publish it?" And I said, Nobody's going to publish that in a book. Nobody's going to do that. Yeah. And he said, "Well, don't worry about it. Just publish it. Do self-publishing."
Oh, good for him or her, whoever it was. Good for them for telling you to just don't wait to be choose yourself. Yes. I like that.
Exactly. And I said, that's a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. And at the time, the online way was through CreateSpace, which is now Kindle Publishing, I think.
Okay.
But I started looking into audiobooks because I missed the performance aspect. I love my sign shop. I've still got my sign shop running. And I created a small audio studio in my basement. And I had to sit down and I had to write this book because these were things that I wanted to publish, but I had to turn it into a book first. So I went through Kindle Publishing and created a copyrighted book that I could then take to Audiobook Creation Exchange, ACX, and created my book. And by the time I got my own first audiobook done on my book, I had already produced 10 audiobooks for other people.
Wow.
Because that's how easy it was. And
it doesn't sound easy to me, but apparently it comes easy to you. And I'm no stranger to the microphone, but I just, but it must come easy to you.
Well, the technology has changed over the years. When I was in the Air Force, if you had a microphone, if you touched it, or if you acted like you were going to touch it, engineers would pop out like ninjas, and they would slap you on the hand. You couldn't touch anything of the equipment. But now with all the advancements in technology, with microphones, et cetera, it's right. I spent $100 on my first microphone, which was is a USB. It plugs into the USB port.
Yeah,
and I was amazed at that. And I started working with that and working with the audio editing software that's out there now. When I started out, we were editing audio reel to reel with a greased pencil and a razor blade and some tape. That was the way audio was edited back then. And I could not believe the advancements in just having a desktop editing software. And it turned out to be very easy to do that editing job. Yeah. But getting in a studio and finding a book that I wanted to do, finding a book that an author wanted done, and then making the agreement with them to do that audiobook for them. Just a godsend. Just a lot of fun, and sometimes you make some money. But to date, I've done about 35 audiobooks.
Oh wow! You have quite the portfolio, and you've authored books,
right? I kept at it, and again, I tend to write what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Years ago, a friend introduced me to an author by the name. Two of my favorite authors were Louis Grizzard.
Yeah, I love Louis.
I got to hear him speak years ago, and he was a funny guy and a great guy. And but he's one of my favorite authors, and also Dave Barry.
Yeah,
from Miami Times.
I don't think I've ever heard Dave Barry, but of course I've read Dave Barry.
And a friend handed me a book written by Dave Barry, and I read it, and I thought, you can write like this? You can do that? Because I was in such a structured program of writing for television and radio. There was so much structure in it, and there was it was done a certain way. But Dave Barry just wrote, you could tell that it was just his brain that was spilling out under the page. And he is a funny guy. I mean, I've got all of his books. He just cracks me up. And I wasn't trying to be like him in my writing. It's just that I learned a lesson from him that I can write like I think.
Yeah.
So a lot of stories from growing up in South Georgia, having a bunch of, being a young redneck youth and doing all sorts of things that probably I shouldn't have lived through, and my cousins and I would probably be dead 100 times. But just stories from then, memoirs from my 4 years in Armed Forces Radio and Television, memoirs, things that happened there. It dawned on me, just get them down. You've got Microsoft Word on your computer.
Right.
Just get them down. Just get it out. And who cares if nobody ever sees it? Somebody might. But if you don't get it down, if you don't write it, then it's just going to evaporate one day, and nobody will know it. And a lot of these stories I try to tell my kids, and they're like, "Oh, Dad, please, oh, God, not again." And so I think, well, maybe one day when I'm dead and gone, maybe then they'll read it if they're curious about their old man, But a lot of stuff I write is just an attempt at humor. And I always put it this way, I always put it this way that with my books, each chapter there's like a bag of potato chips. Each chapter is greasy and it's salty and it has zero nutritional value. But sometimes that's exactly what you need. Sometimes that's, is exactly what you need is a big old bag of greasy, salty chips, and it's a fine thing to sit down with. And I hope that I can pass on something that makes someone laugh or makes someone understand what life is like in another part of the world or for someone else.
Well, I have no doubt at all that you will be able to do that and that you're already doing that. So on this side of your professional life, you are taking on clients to do audiobooks. Is that
sure?
That's a business that you take on?
Sure, that's an ongoing thing, and I do my best to seek out local groups. Local writers groups.
Okay.
And what I consider real writers, not like myself, but, real writers. And you had Mike Cena on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Wasn't he great? I thought.
I've known Mike. I've known Mike for like 4 years, and one day I realized he had a book, and I thought, why haven't you done that as an audiobook? He said, I have no idea how. I said, well, let's get to it, man. Come on. I mean, I produced his audiobook for him, and it was a lot of fun. And
and try to go to any establishment, certainly any place where two or more are gathered, and they already know Mike Cena and think the world of him. And I know I've lived here 4 months now as of this live taping here, but I don't know that I've ever met anyone in Cherokee County that didn't already know and think the world of Mike Cena.
It's impossible not to be friends. It's impossible not to be friends with Mike Cena.
Oh, no, you've got some real challenges if you can't be buddies with Mike. And for a lot of reasons, not the least of which, here's a guy whose first thought is, what can I do to help you? That's where his mind goes immediately.
Yeah, I owe him. I owe Mike a lot. So,
I expect a lot of folks do.
He's a great friend. He's a great friend.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed doing his book because I learned something from it. I don't know money. I don't deal with money well. I'm not good with money.
That's Mike's thing.
That's his thing.
Right.
And that's right. That's his thing. But I learned a lot, and I enjoyed being in the studio reading reading his book and then editing it, you get a double dose of whatever you do.
Right.
But that's definitely enjoyable. So I've tried meetup groups in different author places, different places to meet authors and kind of preach the gospel of audiobooks where if you've written a book and you feel like it could be an audiobook and you just don't know where to start, then it can be done, and you should look into it. And if I can help anybody do that, I'd love to help. I have signed customers that I realize that they've written a book. I've got other customers in my sign business, and I've realized that they've written a book, and I've said,
how about that?
Let's make it into an audiobook. Come on, I mean, there are ways to do it where it doesn't cost anything up front, which is unbelievable. Oh, wow. It's unbelievable today, but that's because of the technology. And it's because of the way things are done now, which is a great advancement. So,
well, I think it's marvelous. I think it's incredible the way that opportunities continue to expand, but only for those who can see them. And you are clearly one of those folks. An idea that struck me as you were talking that might be fun. Maybe we should do a special episode where we feature some local authors. And I'll shut up and just run the board if you want me to, or if you want, you and I can kind of co-host it. But it might be fun to find a handful of local authors and have them come in for like a special episode. Let them talk a little bit about their work and their book. If that's something you're up for, maybe we'll.
Well, I would love to do that.
Scheme around that over a beer or something.
No, that would any excuse to go over information. No, that's good, and the joy in that is the joy that I felt when I looked at publishing a book as something that was insurmountable. It just wasn't something that somebody like me did. It's not something that you do, Dan. And then having a friend that encouraged me to do it, and then looking into it, and then going through the process and learning a lot through it, and then getting to the end and having your own published book, in your hand, and going, "Wow, that's kind of cool." And then, but no, to have a room full of people who are at that place where they've published something for the first time, are very excited about it.
Right.
That would be a lot of fun. Yeah.
All right. Well, stay tuned. We might get that put together. Okay. Before we wrap here, let's make sure that our listeners know where to go, points of contact if they'd like to have a conversation with you or your team about the graphics and the signs and graphics work and or the audio work, whatever you think is appropriate, email, phone number, website, whatever you feel like is the best place for them to reach out and have a conversation.
Well, my sign site, you can, if you type in Signs, Canton, Georgia in your browser, you'll eventually get there. But it is under Coker Signs and Graphics. And my website is cokersigncantongeorgia.com. And the other way would be through my voiceover site, which would be dancokervoiceover.com for voiceover work and things like that. But find me online, and if you need a sign, then we'll get you in a sign whether I make it or not.
Well, it has been an absolute delight having you in the studio, Dan. Quite sincere about maybe wanting to find a way to work and play together some more. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and your insight. And let's find a way to do some more, man.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. And who doesn't love to talk about themselves?
Amen. All right. This is Stone Payton for our guest today, Dan Coker with Coker Signs and Graphics, and everyone here at the Business RadioX family saying we'll see you next time on Cherokee Business Radio.